Have you ever wondered why, after many years of marriage, some women begin to feel increasingly frustrated with their husbands? It's a reality that many long-term couples experience. What once felt like a deep, unbreakable bond can sometimes shift into daily irritations, silent resentment, or even outright hostility. Why does this happen? Why do so many women, after decades of marriage, find themselves feeling disconnected, exhausted, or even resentful toward the very person they once chose to spend their lives with? In this video, we're going to explore the deep-rooted reasons behind this shift, from evolving emotional needs to years of unspoken frustration. Over time, marriages can fall into patterns that cause tension, many of which happen so gradually that neither partner realizes what's happening. Until one day, the warmth is gone and replaced with frustration and emotional distance. These aren't just passing complaints, but psychological and emotional factors that have been quietly shaping relationships for years without either partner even noticing. Whether you're experiencing this in your own marriage or you've seen it happen to others, understanding these patterns can help you gain a new perspective. The good news is there's still a chance to reconnect, change the course, and bring back the joy and fulfillment that might feel lost. So stay with me until the end of this video. The reasons behind this shift might surprise you, and understanding them could be the key to a healthier, happier relationship. Don't go away. Let's explore together how to bring back the connection and emotional intimacy that might feel distant. One of the biggest reasons women begin to resent their husbands as they age is the emotional labor they carry throughout the marriage, often without any appreciation. Emotional labor isn't just about cooking meals, doing the laundry, or managing the home. It's about the unseen work that holds a marriage together. This includes remembering birthdays, managing family schedules, being the one to smooth over conflicts, and always ensuring that everyone else's needs are met. Over the years, many of these responsibilities fall primarily on the woman's shoulders, and if these efforts are never truly acknowledged, resentment can quietly build. Take someone like Carol, a 72-year-old retired teacher. For years, Carol balanced raising 3 children, working full-time, and ensuring her husband's life ran smoothly. Every holiday, she planned the meals. Every birthday, she picked out gifts. She kept track of appointments, maintained friendships for both of them, and made sure life felt organized. But looking back, she realized something. No one had ever done the same for her. Her husband never once asked if she needed help or thanked her for the things she did. Decades later, she didn't feel love anymore. She felt exhausted. Emotional labor like Carol's is invisible, and if it's not recognized, the person carrying it will eventually reach a breaking point. What's important to note here is that it's not that women suddenly change, it's that they simply reach their limit. According to research, women tend to perform most of the emotional labor in a relationship. A study by the American Sociological Association found that 65% of the emotional labor in relationships falls on women, which means they're not just physically maintaining the household, but also emotionally supporting their partners. While a man may believe his financial contributions are enough, the emotional and mental effort it takes to maintain the relationship is just as critical, and when this effort goes unnoticed, it can lead to frustration and even resentment. Over time, many women feel as though their emotional contributions are taken for granted. And when their efforts go unacknowledged, the feeling of being invisible sets in. In the early years of a marriage, small gestures of appreciation, like a simple thank you or a compliment, might be enough to sustain the bond. But as time goes on, these gestures become rare, and a wife may feel more like a caretaker than a partner. This is where love starts to fade and is replaced by frustration, emotional exhaustion, and even regret. If you've ever felt like your emotional contributions were overlooked or unappreciated, you are not alone. It's a reality many women face, often without realizing it, until the weight of it has become too much to bear. But here's the thing. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward making changes that can bring the emotional connection back. If this resonates with you, remember that the effort you put into maintaining your relationship deserves to be recognized, and it's never too late to start rebuilding that mutual respect and appreciation. Another reason many women start to feel distant from their husbands as the years go by is that they begin to feel more like roommates than romantic partners. In the beginning of a marriage, there's excitement, passion, and a deep emotional connection. You laugh together, take walks, share your dreams and fears. But over time, when both partners stop putting in effort, the romance fades, and what remains is a partnership that feels more like two people simply coexisting under the same roof. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual. At first, it might be small things: missed date nights, fewer deep conversations, and routine setting in. But as time passes, the small changes pile up until one day a wife looks up and realizes she no longer feels desired, seen, or appreciated. She feels like a housemate instead of a wife. Let me introduce you to Linda, a 69-year-old retired nurse. Early in her marriage, Linda and her husband shared laughter, went on long walks, and shared their dreams. But over the years, their conversations became shorter. He stopped asking about her day. He spent more time watching TV or sitting in silence. Their lives became parallel, together yet separate. The worst part? He didn't even notice. To him, nothing had changed. But to Linda, everything had. This shift from being emotionally connected to living parallel lives is incredibly common. Many men mistakenly think that once they're married, the effort is done. They believe that simply being present in the home is enough. But that's not the case. Marriage requires ongoing effort. Women need emotional intimacy just as much as physical intimacy. They need to feel wanted, appreciated, and engaged in meaningful conversations. A husband who stops making an effort, stops flirting, stops complimenting, and stops showing genuine interest in his wife will slowly become someone she resents. When a woman no longer feels desired, she begins to ask herself, "Why am I even here?" In fact, studies show that emotional intimacy is just as important, if not more, than physical intimacy for women. According to the American Psychological Association, women report higher satisfaction in their relationships when they feel emotionally connected to their partners. However, when those emotional needs are unmet, feelings of loneliness, resentment, and frustration begin to creep in. And it's not just about physical closeness, it's about emotional distance. Many women try to fix the situation by bringing it up, asking for more affection, more attention, and more connection. But when those requests are ignored or met with indifference, it's like a silent resignation takes over. Slowly, she stops trying, and when she stops trying, the emotional distance becomes permanent. The pain of feeling disconnected can be devastating, and it often doesn't feel like there's a way out. The key is recognizing that this disconnection isn't something that happens on its own. It's the result of years of neglecting the emotional needs of the relationship. If you're feeling this distance in your marriage, or if you've experienced this kind of shift, you are not alone. It's a reality many women face, often without even realizing how far apart they've drifted until it feels too late to repair. But here's the good news. Recognizing this shift is the first step to changing it. The effort is worth it, and it's never too late to start reconnecting and rebuilding the emotional intimacy that might feel lost. Another major reason many women grow resentful toward their husbands as they age is the accumulation of unresolved conflicts over the years. These aren't always huge, dramatic arguments, but rather small disappointments, misunderstandings, and emotional wounds that were never fully addressed. Initially, a woman might let things slide. After all, it's not worth fighting over every little thing, a forgotten anniversary, a dismissive comment, or a disagreement that doesn't seem like a big deal can be brushed aside. But as time goes on, these unresolved issues stack up, and before long, a woman realizes that her husband has hurt her in countless small ways, none of them significant enough to break the marriage, but together they form a deep emotional wall. Let me share a little story of Patricia, a 74-year-old retired accountant. On the surface, her marriage of over 40 years seemed stable, but deep inside, Patricia carried years of resentment. She remembered every time her feelings had been dismissed, every promise that had been broken, and every time her needs had been ignored. She had brought up her frustrations in the past, only for them to be brushed aside with remarks like, "You're overreacting," or "That was years ago, why bring it up now?" Over time, Patricia stopped arguing. She stopped expecting change. She stopped seeing her husband as someone who truly cared about her feelings. And that's the problem. When conflicts aren't resolved, when issues are minimized or ignored, resentment quietly builds. It's not about one big fight, but 1,000 small moments that leave a woman feeling unseen and unheard. In fact, studies show that couples who fail to resolve conflict in a healthy way are more likely to experience long-term dissatisfaction in their marriages. According to research from the University of Washington's Marriage Lab, couples who avoid or suppress conflict are significantly more likely to experience emotional disconnection over time. This silent resentment can create an emotional distance that becomes difficult to overcome. Many men don't even realize this is happening. They assume that because their wife isn't arguing with them, everything is fine. They mistake silence for peace, but often silence is simply the absence of effort. A woman has stopped trying to be heard. The deeper issue is that a woman who no longer feels emotionally validated will start to withdraw. She may stop initiating conversations, stop expressing her needs, and eventually stop caring as much. The silence that follows can feel louder than any argument. If this resonates with you, know that you are not alone. Many women go through this experience, often in silence, hoping things will change on their own. But the reality is that change won't happen unless both partners are willing to address these issues head-on. If you feel like your emotions have been ignored or invalidated for years, it's never too late to start having those difficult conversations. Acknowledging these unresolved conflicts and working together to resolve them can lead to a stronger, more connected relationship. It's not about assigning blame. It's about understanding each other's feelings and finding a way forward together. And once that happens, the healing can begin. As women age, their priorities and desires naturally evolve, and often, their husbands fail to recognize or adapt to these changes. What once felt like a fulfilling life, raising children, managing a home, supporting a husband's career, can start to feel like a chapter that is coming to an end. Many women reach a point where they want something more, whether it's a sense of personal growth, deeper emotional connection, or a newfound independence. But when their husbands remain stuck in the same routine, unaware of these changes, it creates a painful divide. For years, women may put their own dreams and desires aside to prioritize their family's needs. They focus on raising children, maintaining stability, and ensuring everyone else's needs are met. But once the kids are grown and the household no longer requires the same level of attention, women start to look around and realize something is missing. Meet Helen, a 68-year-old retired librarian. For decades, her life was centered around her family. She was the one who planned family vacations, helped with school projects, and made sure the house was warm and welcoming. But now, in retirement, Helen found herself craving new experiences. She wanted to travel, join social groups, and take up hobbies she never had time for before. But her husband, he was perfectly content sitting in front of the TV every evening, uninterested in exploring anything new. Every time she suggested doing something different, he would dismiss it, saying, "I'm happy the way things are." What he didn't realize was that Helen wasn't. This is where resentment starts to grow. A woman who has spent her entire life putting others first starts to realize that no one is doing the same for her. She begins to crave a life that feels fulfilling, but when her husband refuses to engage or evolve with her, she feels trapped in a marriage that no longer meets her emotional needs. Studies show that women are more likely to experience dissatisfaction in marriage when their emotional needs are ignored. According to a 2018 study published in the Journal of Marriage and Family, Women's satisfaction in marriage is closely linked to the emotional support they receive from their spouses. When that support diminishes, it can lead to feelings of isolation and frustration. As women's priorities shift, they begin to wonder if their marriage still aligns with their vision for the future. And when their husband refuses to grow alongside them, the relationship can feel stagnant. The truth is, aging should be a time of new possibilities, not just a continuation of old routines. When a woman feels like she's still growing, but her husband has stopped evolving, it creates a disconnect that's hard to bridge. If you've ever felt like your priorities have shifted while your spouse remains stuck in old habits, you're not alone. This is something many women experience as they age. But here's the good news. Recognizing this disconnect is the first step toward rekindling the connection. If you're still watching, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever felt like your priorities changed while your partner didn't? Share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share this video with someone who might benefit from hearing this message. Your engagement helps us continue creating content that supports and empowers you. Another painful reason women grow resentful toward their husbands as they age is the gradual loss of both emotional and physical affection. While every marriage changes over time, when affection fades completely, it leaves many women feeling unwanted, unloved, and disconnected from the person they once felt closest to. In the early stages of a relationship, there are warm gestures like holding hands, spontaneous kisses, and small acts of tenderness that make a woman feel cherished and seen. But as the years pass, many husbands grow comfortable and begin to overlook these gestures. They assume that the affection of earlier years is no longer necessary or relevant, but for a woman, these small acts of love are the glue that holds the emotional bond together. Let me tell you about Sharon, a 71-year-old retired secretary. She remembered when she and her husband used to hold hands while walking, when he would gently place his hand on her back as they talked, when he would give her a warm hug, just because. But now their conversations had become routine, discussions about bills, errands, and the day's events. Physical closeness had all but disappeared. The moment Sharon realized things had changed wasn't after a big argument. It was the subtle realization that the small touches, the thoughtful compliments, and the playful flirtation were gone. When she brought it up to her husband, telling him, "I miss the way things used to be," his response was simply, "We're too old for that now." And in that moment, Sharon realized that her husband no longer saw the problem. What many men don't understand is that affection isn't just about romance, it's about emotional security. When a husband stops showing affection, it doesn't just make a woman feel lonely, it makes her feel invisible. Emotional neglect like this creates a deep wound, one that isn't always visible on the surface, but festers over time. Studies have shown that emotional and physical affection are both critical to the health of a marriage. According to research published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, couples who maintain regular physical and emotional affection report higher levels of relationship satisfaction. On the other hand, the absence of affection can lead to dissatisfaction and emotional withdrawal. When physical intimacy and emotional closeness fade, a woman may begin to feel as if she's not a partner, but merely a cohabitant, someone sharing a living space rather than a life. This shift can be incredibly painful because it leaves a woman wondering if she still matters, if she's still loved, and if she's still desired. The truth is, many women try to address this issue before giving up. They bring up their feelings, expressing how much they miss the warmth, the attention, and the affection. But when those concerns are met with indifference or are brushed off, it deepens the emotional distance. Once a woman stops asking for love and affection, it's not because she no longer wants it. It's because she has accepted that she won't get it. That realization, when it sinks in, is often what kills whatever emotional connection remains. It's not the loss of physical intimacy alone that hurts. It's the loss of emotional intimacy. The feeling that she is no longer seen or valued. The emotional disconnect that follows is one of the deepest wounds a marriage can inflict. Another significant source of resentment in long-term bachelor marriages is the feeling of being taken for granted. Over the years, many women give, sacrifice, and show love endlessly, but without receiving the same level of acknowledgement or appreciation in return. Initially, small gestures of gratitude such as a thank you for making dinner or planning a special occasion go a long way. However, as time goes by, these expressions of appreciation fade. The things that once felt like acts of love become expected duties, and when the gratitude disappears, so does the warmth in the relationship. Take Nancy, a 72-year-old retired school principal. For years, she had taken care of every aspect of their household without complaint, making sure her husband's favorite meals were on the table, keeping the house in order, scheduling appointments, and handling all the small details that made their lives smoother. But over time, Nancy started to notice a shift. Her husband never said thank you anymore. When she went out of her way to do something thoughtful, it was met with silence, as though it was simply her job. One day, after preparing a meal she knew he would love, she sat down and looked at him, asking, "Do you even notice how much I do for you?" His response was a confused shrug. That was the moment Nancy realized her efforts had become invisible. This feeling of being unappreciated is more common than many realize. According to a 2020 study by the National Institute of Aging, one of the top reasons older women report dissatisfaction in their marriages is the lack of recognition for the emotional and physical labor they provide. When a woman feels unseen or undervalued, it creates an emotional distance that is hard to bridge. It's not just about the big gestures of love, but the daily acknowledgement of each other's efforts that keeps the emotional connection alive. When that acknowledgement is absent, resentment starts to build. In a marriage, when appreciation fades, it's not just the acts of love that are lost. It's the emotional bond itself. A woman who feels taken for granted will begin to withdraw, not because she no longer cares, but because she has nothing left to give. She stops initiating the little acts of kindness, the smiles, and the attention that once held the relationship together. And when a woman stops giving, the relationship begins to erode. Men often don't realize how much these small gestures matter. They may think everything is fine because their wives haven't said anything, but silence in this case is not a sign of peace. It's a sign of emotional exhaustion. A simple thank you or an unexpected compliment can make a world of difference. When these words disappear, so does the emotional connection. This is why it's so important to recognize and appreciate the efforts of your partner every day, no matter how small they seem. Gratitude is the foundation of any strong relationship, and when it's missing, love begins to fade. Finally, one of the most heartbreaking reasons women begin to resent their husbands as they age is the painful realization that they have simply grown apart. This doesn't happen suddenly, but over years of routine neglect and a lack of emotional effort to stay connected. Many marriages start with a strong, deep connection, intimate conversations, shared dreams, and the feeling of being partners in life. But as time goes on, life's demands, careers, children, and daily responsibilities begin to take priority. If both partners don't actively make an effort to grow together, they inevitably start to drift apart. Take Margaret, a 74-year-old retired social worker. When she and her husband were younger, they would stay up late talking about their hopes, dreams, and fears for the future. But as the years went by, their conversations became shallow. Margaret remembers asking her husband about his thoughts on something important, only for him to grunt in response or change the subject. When she tried to discuss her personal interests or growth, he barely listened. Eventually, Margaret came to the painful realization that she was living with a man who no longer truly knew her. The intimacy they once shared had been replaced by indifference, and this emotional disconnect left her feeling more alone than ever. This is the reality many women face after decades of marriage. They realize that the person they once connected with is now a stranger. A study by the American Association of Retired Persons AARP, found that over 40% of married adults over the age of 50 report feeling emotionally disconnected from their spouses. Emotional intimacy, once a cornerstone of the relationship, fades as daily life takes over. The deeper connection that once existed seems to dissolve as the partners begin to live more like housemates than true companions. For women, this emotional distance is often felt more intensely. They may feel like their thoughts, feelings, and desires no longer matter to their husbands. The sadness of realizing that their partner no longer engages with them the way they once did can feel like a silent heartbreak. It's not about the lack of physical presence, it's about the emotional absence. When a woman feels like her husband no longer truly understands her, it's as though the foundation of their marriage has crumbled. The shift from emotional connection to emotional distance is one of the most difficult things to face in a long-term marriage. But this isn't a hopeless situation. Recognizing this shift and acknowledging that you've grown apart is the first step toward repairing the relationship. It may take effort, patience, and a commitment from both partners to rekindle the emotional intimacy that has been lost. However, it is possible to rebuild that connection, to start talking again, and to rediscover the person you once loved deeply. The key is making the conscious decision to nurture the relationship and remain emotionally present for one another. As we've explored, the reasons behind growing resentment in long-term marriages aren't always dramatic or obvious. They build over time, small moments, unspoken frustrations, and unmet emotional needs that gradually turn what once was a loving, fulfilling relationship into one filled with distance, silence, and resentment. However, the most important takeaway here is that these changes don't have to be permanent. Acknowledging the issues and recognizing that your emotional needs, desires, and efforts matter is the first step toward healing. If you find yourself in a similar situation, know that you're not alone. Many women experience these shifts in their marriages, often without realizing how far apart they've drifted until it feels like a distant memory. But it's never too late to reconnect. If both partners are willing to make an effort, whether it's through open communication, expressing appreciation, rekindling affection, or simply spending quality time together, relationships can find their way back to the emotional intimacy they once had. Love isn't something that simply happens. It's something that requires constant attention, effort, and understanding. If you're feeling disconnected from your partner, the good news is that it's possible to bridge the gap and rediscover the connection that once brought you together. The key is not waiting for change to happen, but taking that first step toward rekindling your bond. So if this video resonated with you, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on your own relationship. If you found these insights helpful, please like, share, and comment below. Let us know your thoughts, your experiences, and how you're thinking about applying these ideas to your life. And don't forget to subscribe for more content that explores real-life issues with compassion and understanding. Your engagement helps us continue to create content that supports and uplifts you.